All right, everyone. Thank you all for coming in to our second session, second Wednesday of a career speaker series at RFK Community School. Here we have today Ms. Terra Gottesfeld, Senior Consultant Brand Development at Innovation Protocol. She has a master's degree in public health from George Washington and Bachelor of Arts from UC San Diego. So this is a brief introduction. Ms. Terra, should I say Ms. Terra? You can briefly introduce yourself to our students. That'd be great.
Yes. Hi, everyone. So happy to be here today. So like Gina said, I'm Terra Gottesfeld. I work at Innovation Protocol as a senior consultant of brand development. And I know we will talk all about sort of what that means. But yeah, really, and I'm based, I know we're all kind of over the place because of the pandemic, but I'm based in Los Angeles right now, as are all of you. And I actually went to LAUSD schools myself. So really excited to be here today.
Oh, wow. Which high school did you attend?
I went high school, I went to Crescendo Valley High, but I went to Overland Elementary School in Palms.
Oh, wow. All right. So proud LAUSD, the graduate.
Through and through.
So please, students, if you have any questions to Ms. Terra, please chat on the chat box. And how we're going to today's session is I will ask her general questions that most students are interested in. And I will pull out the questions on the chat box to ask your questions. And this session will go until 2 o'clock today. All right. So Ms. Terra, so what does Innovation Protocol do? And what is your role at the company?
Yes, of course. So Innovation Protocol is a brand strategy and design firm. So what that means more simply is you've all probably know the word brand somehow, right? It's, you've heard of Nike, you've heard of Apple. These are all brands. So what Innovation Protocol does is help brands really understand who they are and why they matter, and then how to communicate that. So we have two departments at a high level. We have strategy and we have design. Strategy is what I do. And that is really the people coming up with the story and the words behind what a brand does. So if we use Nike as an example, because you've probably all heard of Nike, they do make good shoes, they do make good athletic wear, but you've probably also heard of brands like New Balance or Adidas. And there's a reason why everyone thinks Nike is such a cool brand. It's not really that their shoe is so much better, right? It's that Nike has this really cool story about empowering athletes. When you look at Nike's brand, they say that if you have a body, you're an athlete. Like, what a cool message that they've created. And so that is really what we do for companies. We help a company that says, we sell some really boring technology. And we say, but what does your technology really do for people? Maybe the technology enables people to work together. Maybe it helps people save time so they can get home to their families. We're helping brands sort of like understand all of these messages that are more important than just sort of what they do, and then communicating that. So I get the fun job of writing things you might see on an About Us on a web page, or the sort of our story part of a web page. Maybe it's writing things that you would actually see on an advertisement or something like that. Though advertising and marketing are a little bit different than strategy, and that those are sort of the ways that the brand comes to life, usually after Innovation Protocol has worked with clients. We also have a whole design department, which makes things like logos and graphics and things like that that are called brand systems. So the visual brand system is really what informs how a brand communicates visually. And then my role specifically as a senior consultant is to be sort of the main person working with a specific client. So when they come to us and they say, we know what we do matters, we know it's important, but we don't know how to communicate it, I'm sort of the first line of contact to say, like, let's figure this all out. What's the best way to figure this out, and kind of go from there. So starting with really just like the how do we tell your story, and then getting more and more specific with the specific words, designs, things like that.
Wow, it's a complicated system.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's a fascinating world. What made you decide to go in this field? Did you decide from high school? Did you decide from college? What made you decide in this field?
Yeah, so way after, actually. But I studied psychology in college, so I was always really interested in how people thought and how the way that we think kind of changes our behavior. And then I was also always really interested in health, so I loved sort of fitness and nutrition and things like that. And so after college, I went straight to George Washington University, as you said, Gina, to get my master's in public health. And what I wanted to do with that degree was, have you ever seen a commercial that tells you not to smoke or not to do drugs or that you should eat more healthfully? So I wanted to be the person basically making those commercials. I wanted to create sort of marketing materials around not buying something, but actually doing a behavior. So how do you convince someone not to smoke? How do you convince someone that they should eat 5 fruits and vegetables a day? So I was really interested in sort of bringing my psychology background to making positive change in the way that people act for, sort of toward them being healthier people. And that was actually kind of not that dissimilar to where I landed. What I ended up kind of dropping was the health specific focus, because I realized that I really wanted to focus on how to communicate sort of more in general. And I didn't want to feel limited to health and public health. So that is something I'm still very, very passionate about. But that is kind of how I got where I am. So I really have retained the interest in how to communicate with people and how to create positive change through words.
So you mentioned you're majoring in psychology, always curious about behavior in our mind. And I mean, but what's the story behind it? How did you choose to major psychology at college?
Oh, that's a good one, Gina. So my parents were actually a psychologist and a therapist.
Okay.
So I grew up like really getting grilled at the dinner table. No, I'm kidding. But I did, it was funny. I grew up with my parents talking about psychology all the time, talking about, you know, the different types of problems they were seeing in their workday. And I always was really fascinated by it, but also said over and over again, probably from the time I was much younger than all of you, I never want to major in psychology. I would never be a psychologist. Like I want to do something totally different. And then when I got to UCSD, I just realized like I'm really interested in psychology. And I never necessarily thought I wanted to use it to become a psychologist or a therapist, but I felt like learning more about the way people think and the science behind it. So how does the brain work? How do our interactions with different people impact the way that we think and behave? That was really fascinating to me, and something that I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do after college, but I figured it would end up being useful. And luckily I was right.
Yeah, I think that's great, because right now I think when I meet many high school kids, psychology is their potential major, because obviously with the COVID, we want to understand ourselves a little bit more. But I think your next journey, for master for your health at the George Washington, is a quite different journey compared to other psych major. What made you decide to go in that route?
Yeah, so in I guess it was my second to last year, so my junior year at UCSD, I was starting to get to the point like everyone does in college at the end, where you have to kind of start focusing on what am I going to do after this? Eventually, I need to have a job. I need to make money. Sort of like, how am I going to do that in the world? And so I got, as many college students do, an internship working for a nutrition company. Okay. And they were based in San Diego near UCSD. And they basically sold like sort of like health and fitness foods and kind of other athletic nutrition related things. And I don't know why they trusted me, a college student, to do anything, because I probably wasn't qualified, but I got to write a lot of the sort of words on their website to help consumers understand why they should invest in this, why nutrition was important, things like that. So I was, working on like their Twitter, their social media. I was writing things that were going on their website. I was writing articles that went to their clients about sort of the latest developments in food and nutrition. And I realized I really liked this sort of idea of like communicating about health, and the whole time doing it, thinking about like, how do people think and how do we change their behavior? So that's sort of how I got to public health.
That's a very amazing, awesome story to hear. All right. So how did you feel when you were looking for your first job out of college? For your case, it's your master's
Mhm,
degree, but
mhm,
how did you feel when you first looking for a job after your master's degree?
mhm. Very, very overwhelmed. So I think that I thought so much about going to graduate school to study something that I thought was fun and interesting and that I wanted to talk about and think about all the time. But I hadn't necessarily thought so much about what am I actually going to do when I get out of here. And
Mm,
I think, yeah, so I was a little bit overwhelmed. I was a little bit confused. I think what helped me through that time the most was having really good mentors. So I had professors from grad school and college who I had conversations with, and also just talking to people in my life, like this conversation now. I wish I had gone to more events like this where I could learn about what do people actually do in a specific job. Once you get this education and you have this interest, how do you actually go out and make money doing it, and what do you spend your days doing in these various jobs? But yes,
great.
very confused and overwhelmed. Definitely did not know the job I had now existed.
That's great, because I think right now our students are still confused what they want to
Mhm,
major, what they want to
mhm,
do. But I think we were very glad to hear the summer internship after junior in college,
mhm,
that how the nutrition company made you to connect the next dots, because I think
mhm.
that's what we can do, right? Connect the dots at a
Yes.
time. Right.
Mhm.
What is the best part? What do you enjoy most about your job?
I absolutely love writing. I've always loved
Writing.
writing, and I like the power of language to really create feelings in people and make them think more about the way that they behave. So if you look back to this like Nike example, if why do you buy Nike over New Balance? And a lot of that has to do with the way that that brand looks and the different words that they use when you see their website or their advertisement. And I love that I get to do that for clients every day. I get to think about what does it mean if you're a technology company versus an artificial intelligence company, just
Mm,
sort of being very sensitive to how different little tweaks in the way that we speak can really change the way that people think about you, and that these messages are getting seen by millions of people sometimes. So I feel very lucky to get to write them.
right, right. So let's say going back to your high school, what was your
Yeah.
favorite subject? What kind of student you were?
This probably doesn't surprise you based on what I said, but I always loved English classes.
Mm-hmm.
I liked to read. I liked to write about what I read and sort of think about what it meant. So I think a lot of the books that you read in high school, they aren't just about sort of the one story or the one character. Most of the books that your teachers kind of choose to share with you have some meaning about like your life. Maybe it's how friendships work, how families work,
Right.
you know, politics or, you know, culture. And so I always really appreciated that about books. And I also was on my high school literary magazine. So I was an editor for that. So I always had this kind of like passion for writing and for also editing other people's writing,
Mm.
which is something a lot of people do not enjoy, but I like almost as much as writing myself, is just sort of finding ways to improve what others have written and make it more powerful.
Sure. So what are some of your favorite brand company that you have worked on?
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
I'm sorry, brand campaign that you have worked on.
Yeah, yeah. So I worked with, let's see, this is a tough one. I worked with I can't say which one, but I will tell you that the type of company. So you've probably all heard of Uber Eats, DoorDash, Postmates, Grubhub. There are a million other food
Mhm.
delivery apps, right? Where especially during COVID, when we can't go out to dinner with our friends and family anymore, where maybe we're using them to order food. And I worked with one of those companies to build a brand for not the consumer, so me ordering food, but actually for the driver.
Oh,
Because it's not something you think about a lot, but they all kind of sound the same. They all kind of look the same, right? They all deliver food from a restaurant to a person. But in order for all of these different brands to be successful, they need to have enough drivers.
mm,
Because if you're like, I want a pizza right now, and then the app says your pizza is going to take 3.5 hours, I don't know about you, but I'm probably a little too hungry for that, and I'm going to go to a different app.
yeah.
So what we were doing is building a brand for the drivers. So why would you want to work for this specific food delivery company versus one of the 10 or 20 others? What are we doing for our drivers? So I think that was one of the more fun ones I've worked on.
That's very creative, very essential, but not many people think of that. Yeah, because without a driver, this program won't exist. And that is awesome, and we're glad to hear that you are behind the scene of these drivers for finding their most convenient the food delivery system to you as well. Yeah. But then, what can be some kind of challenges you face in your work, in your career?
So I think the biggest challenge that I face in my career is really the same one that maybe you face in high school every day. Maybe not, but for me in high school, and it's really just dealing with people. It's one of the most fun parts of the job, and it's also one of the hardest parts of the job. So if you have a client who doesn't like what you did or who doesn't agree with you, if you have a person you work with who doesn't like what you did or doesn't agree with you, you're always sort of working with different personalities and different ideas. And the great thing about brand is there's no right answer. It's not like working in math, which you didn't ask what subject I was the worst at in high school, but it was but I think one thing that I think if I were good at math, I would probably like about math is there is a right answer. You can say like, I got it right. Cool, check A. Whereas in brand, I could say, I think this sounds really great. I think this is the story you want to tell. But the clients I work with, or even maybe like my boss, my manager says like, that doesn't really work for me. I'm not feeling it. And so being able to stay professional and stay positive and stay inspired, even when you have to work with the fact that there is no right answer. And part of the challenge of the job is being a persuasive enough speaker and writer that you can say there is no one right answer, but this is why I think this is the right answer for you, for your brand, for your company, and what you want to accomplish.
Right. Yeah. So that's again dealing with the many no's and how to persuade.
Yeah. And I think one thing that's really helped me with that is any job you have, no matter what, whether you work in consulting like I do or in any other industry, you're always going to have someone who you're trying to make happy, whether it's a customer or a client or just another coworker. And I think one thing that's really helped kind of keep me inspired is just this idea of kind of empathy and thinking about, this client wants to be successful. So if you take the example for the food delivery app, right? Like, what do they want? They want to deliver more food to people, not just to make money, but because this app was very passionate about the fact that there are all these restaurants that maybe there are the big brands that deliver on there like McDonald's or Subway, but there's also like, the really amazing taco shop on the corner or the great place to get bibimbap or whatever it is. And you might not even know that these restaurants exist. And this company was really passionate about the fact that this delivery app is allowing more people to understand that these restaurants exist, to eat that food, to enjoy it. And so when I really try to think about what does this brand really want? What do the people working here really want? That's something that kind of helps get me over the hump of like, okay, this one thing I wrote, I have to rewrite. That sucks. I don't have time to do it. I don't feel like doing it right now, but I'm working towards something bigger. And these people are really on the same team as I am. They're not like someone I'm in a battle with. We all are working toward the same sort of good mission.
I think I think that sorry, that leads to my next question. You mentioned about how it's important to have empathy to understand the client does everything. What kind of personality will be a good fit with that? The company such as Innovation Protocol to be successful.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's really open-mindedness. So what I've realized is when I started doing jobs like this, my first reaction was that when someone said, that's not right, I was defensive and I was like, well, this is why it's right. Or my feelings got hurt. And I said, well, I worked really hard on this. I'm really sad that you don't like it. And I think that what's really important in this profession is to be open-minded and to be someone who's willing to say, okay, like let's talk more about why this doesn't feel right to you. And like, let's collaborate. So someone who's willing to discuss and who's willing to be open-minded to the way other people think and the way other people act and kind of, not tied to there being one way to do something is very, very important, whether you work on strategy like I do or on design. Because our graphic designers have the same thing where they design a logo that they think is beautiful. And then the client will say like, oh, like that looks like something my 5-year-old daughter would like. And it's like totally just an opinion, but we still have to deal with it. And so just thinking about, okay, well, what about it feels like that? Oh, it's just that it's the color pink. Everything else looks good. Being willing to like ask that question and then adapt and, you know, create something that everyone's happy with.
Yeah. Right.
And also I think being curious is the other thing. So what I like about my job is I have worked with, in the last year, for example, I've worked with furniture companies, I've worked with real estate companies, I've worked with the food delivery company I talked about, I've worked with technology companies. The list just goes on. And I think you have to be comfortable learning about something you've never learned about before pretty quickly. And, you know, if that's something that energizes you like it does for me, it's a great job. But if you prefer to kind of have one thing you know a ton about, but not necessarily learn about a lot of other industries, then, you know, probably not a good fit.
Just before our session, I went to your the company website and briefly read your profile. I think being curious was in your top description. Yes, I think that makes sense too, because you will work with the other different companies and products that you didn't know of. So with open mind, with the curiosity, you need to approach. I have one of the questions from students. How long does it take you to design something?
So I don't in my job actually design like logos and things, but I'm assuming that might be what you mean. So I'll answer assuming that's what you mean. It really can take, I mean, building a brand can take anywhere from a couple of months to a couple of years. A lot of it depends on how quickly people can agree on things, not necessarily like how long it takes to write an about us or to build a logo. But if we're talking about like building a logo or something like that, like literal design, I would say usually it takes our designers maybe a couple of weeks to draft something based on sort of the ideas that the client shared and their vision for this brand. And then there's kind of a process where they look at it, they provide feedback, we edit it. I would say maybe like a month if you're talking about a great logo.
Okay, so in a month. And you mentioned about a different team strategy department, the design department.
Yeah.
How big is your department to discuss, you know, because edit and go by chatting back and forth?
Yeah. So the strategy department is about, I think we have like 12-ish people right now, and about the same on design. We're about a 20 to 25 person company, depending on things. And it's really fun that the two departments work together a lot. So I'm always on a project with a designer, and we're never thinking about just like I'm writing and you're designing. We're always thinking about like, if you take Nike, right? If this brand is all about inspiration and empowerment, my words should feel inspiring and empowering, but the design should also feel inspiring and empowering. And so we're always presenting to clients in the same presentation, and in between our meetings with clients, we're always talking behind the scenes about how we can make everything feel like one story.
Right. A lot of collaboration, a lot of, you know, communication. And where do your ideas come from? You have so many creative ideas. Where do your ideas come from?
That's a great question. It really starts with thinking about what's authentic already about this brand. So one thing that I think sometimes when clients work with Innovation Protocol, they think that we're gonna like come up with this story out of midair. Like we're just gonna think of something that like sounds cool and we're gonna run with it. But what actually happens is you asked my favorite part of the job, and I think after the writing, my next favorite part of the job is we talk to a whole bunch of people inside the company. So we talk to the people who are like really, really high up. We talk to maybe like someone who's a couple of years older than you, who's like an intern there. We talk to people of all different positions, all different sort of roles there. Could be finance, could be marketing, could be human resources, the person who's hiring new employees. And we try to really understand what is actually true about this brand. Like, what do you actually do? What do you actually care about? And then we try to latch on to that. So for example, I worked with a real estate company, And what they do sounded exactly like everyone else. And they were saying, you know, we have Wi-Fi in every unit, and we have like a couch in every unit. And it was like, well, yeah, like, I mean, I guess that's good. I guess some places don't have Wi-Fi, but that's probably not the most interesting story you can tell if I'm deciding where I want to stay. And what I found when I went to these properties and actually sort of toured them and talked to people was that they had this attitude of like, yes, we will literally do anything. So when I got there, the manager like asked if I was hungry and offered me like food from his own fridge. And I was like, that's unusual. Or like the whole company, like from the housekeeper to the leader of the company, they all like said a prayer together, like no specific religion, but just every day before work, they all got together and like just sort of like talked about positive things they wanted to achieve that day. And there was this real feeling of like wanting to get things done, and just sort of this like family feeling that they weren't really talking about, but was such a big part of their brand. So we built a whole brand that was literally called Yes, was the name of the brand that we built. And it was all about sort of like empowering the person who stays there and being willing to do anything. And we had language around, you know, like knowing your dog's name, knowing your kid's name, having, you know, a choice when you come in about like, you know, kind of like, do you want coffee or tea in your room? So we kind of had to latch on to what was already true about them and just say, you're already doing these things, we're just going to say it.
Yeah, that's a very, very personal contact, getting to know. It goes very down. So when we talk about, you know, brand marketing, so many students will only think about business major, but college major also can land it in a job as a brand manager at your job. If you're a student thinking about, you know, following your footsteps, what kind of advice can you give it to them? What kind of skills should she or he acquire?
Yeah, so I think depending on if you're more interested in the artistic part of brand versus the writing part, I think psychology is a great major. I think a lot of people who do work in brand major in psychology, because it's really all about understanding the way that people think and how can we use, whether it's words or visuals, to really tap into the way that people think and have them behave a different way or a new way. I think, like you said, Gina, business majors often do end up in this world because a lot of what we do is also talking to companies about sort of the way they work. So a brand isn't just what consumers see, it's also how you work internally, right? So if you have a whole brand that's about empowerment at Nike, and then everyone at Nike who works there feels unempowered, and they feel like every idea they have is getting shot down and it's only about like the leadership, no one else matters. I'm gonna guess that's not how it would feel to work at Nike, because I don't think they would have been able to build the brand they built without the people who are writing their copy and designing their products also feeling empowered, right? So I think thinking about the way that sort of businesses work. I know a lot of people are communications majors or PR, marketing, things like that. Those things are a little different than brand, but a lot of people do kind of come into brand with that background as well.
Yeah. That's so. And I'm sure at your job, you have many students who took different kind of major in their undergraduate and they landed on the same job as well.
Yeah, absolutely, totally. And for the people who are on like the design team, so if you're someone who's like, it would be really fun to design logos or to, you know, be the one building advertisements or marketing materials or things like that for brands. A lot of people major in graphic design, things like that. I know that's a major at a lot of colleges. There are also specific schools. I know like in LA, our creative director went to Otis College of Design. So you can go to a college and just major in that, or you can go to a college where there's only design if you feel really sure that's what you want to do.
So for yourself, what do you see yourself in 5 years now from career point wise?
Yeah. I mean, I love strategy. I love telling stories. I think one of my goals is to just continue. I mentioned that I had a public health background, and I've always been really passionate about health, nutrition, fitness, all of that. And so just kind of continuing my career to find opportunities where I can do storytelling with brands in the health industry. So whether that's a fitness brand or a food brand that makes really healthy food, just communicating with people about issues that I really care about, or even on a more fun note, just continuing to seek out brands that I like. Like I would love to do branding for a makeup company, or for an entertainment company that makes a TV show that I really like. So just finding opportunities to stay really inspired and connected to the work I do.
Yeah. I mean, we're saying we're gonna live up to 100 years old. So I think being active, healthy, fitness is the thing we have to, practice every day of our lives. I mean, I'm sure there are more brands popping up, and then I think people will be more aware of, including myself as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's only becoming more important as we live longer. It's a good thing.
Yes. So what advice do you have for students in general about achieving their career goals?
That's a great question. I think for me, what was most important is not feeling like once I had made a decision, I was stuck anywhere. So I didn't decide in high school that I wanted to work in strategy. And if you're someone who does say, right now, you know exactly what you want to do and you know how to get there, that's great. But I think it's also okay to be open-minded and to just sort of follow the things that you're interested in. So the way that I got to this job was by saying, this is what's fun and interesting to me. These are things I'm skilled at or talented at, and just kind of continuing to feel okay about exploring that. I don't think I would have found this job if I hadn't done some other jobs first. And sometimes it even means that you have to take a position that's one level down at the new job because you don't know things yet. And just sort of being willing to experiment and know that, I feel like most of my friends didn't have the job they have now when they were right out of college or graduate school. Right. They kind of had to have a few jobs and figure it out. The other thing is just going to events like this, talking to people, whether it's your parents or your parents' friends or just other people you meet. When someone does something interesting, most people are very happy to have a conversation with you so you can understand, okay, that sounds cool, but what do you actually do with this job? And just, say, can I get a cup of coffee with you, or can I get lunch with you and just talk about what you do? And I think those conversations will help you connect to different jobs that maybe aren't like teacher or doctor or something where you're like, I understand what this person does. So just, and feel free to use me as one of those people. If what I talk about today is interesting, I'm happy to have a call with any of you to just talk more about it and sort of how to get here. But yeah, connect with people, learn more.
That's awesome. Does your company have a high school internship as well? Just in case, just be curious.
We do sometimes have high school students who kind of get some exposure to what we do. Yes. So if someone is really interested, there's definitely a way for you to learn more about us.
I'm glad that
we don't have a formal high school internship program, but we do have ways in which we involve high school students. So yes, absolutely. If you're interested, reach out and we'll find a way for you to learn more.
Sure. And then I just want to ask you, we only about 10 minutes, so trying to wrap it up, but what made you decide to go to, because I'm sure the master's degree at GW was quite different experience that you had in UCSD. How different, and how did you, manage, and what was the reason?
Why I went to, like, how I chose George Washington? Oh, yeah, that's actually easy. So I did a program at UCSD where I know Rachel, who's online, also went, called UCDC. And what it is the University of California schools have an opportunity where you can do an internship in Washington, D.C., because there are a lot of interesting jobs there, working in government and policy and things like that. So I actually had an internship working for educational television. That was really fun, but I think even more than the internship itself, which was very useful, I just loved Washington, D.C. I thought it was the most fun city. I made great friends there. I loved sort of just being around all of the sort of policy and culture, and it was fun. It was diverse. I liked the weather. Call me crazy, but I grew up in California. It was kind of fun to actually wear a
Experience of
coat.
snow and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah, like it was just a really fun experience. And so when I thought about where to go to grad school, that was my first choice, partly because I wanted to live in DC, and partly because I felt like when I was studying public health and just sort of how do you change the way people think and behave, a lot of those decisions are made in Washington, DC. So I thought it would be a really great place to learn more about that. And it was. I got to go to really interesting events and meet really interesting people that I probably wouldn't have met outside of Washington, DC.
All right, students, all UCs have a UCDC program where you can
Yes.
work in one semester. So please take advantage of it. And you don't necessarily have to spend 4 years in East Coast. You can take advantage of this, semester abroad, a semester away program.
Yeah, it's really fun. You can go for about 3 months and you live with people who go to other University of California schools. So I lived with people who went to UCLA, UC Santa Barbara, UC Riverside, all the different UCs. So I made great friends there. One of my friends I made there was a bridesmaid in my wedding one day. So like really made amazing friends. And yeah, even if you don't go back to DC like I did, it's a really fun way to live in another city. And you can still take your college courses and you pay the same tuition and things like that. So it just kind of feels like, living somewhere else, but continuing your path.
Mm-hmm. I think you are, doing great from high school to college, graduate your career. But if you will go back, time travel to be a high school, what kind of things you want to do differently? And then maybe another career or the same career, what would you do differently?
That's a great question. I think that maybe what I would have done is I was so worried about figuring it out early versus kind of just being open-minded. And I think I was always trying to be one step ahead of things. I was a little bit scared maybe to try new things or to take risks. Maybe things like what I said, like reaching out to someone and just saying, hey, do you mind telling me more about what you do? I'm interested, and just kind of following my heart earlier, making those connections earlier. I was very shy in high school, but now I realize that most people who like what they do are very happy to talk to you about it. And I think that I would have probably learned about this job I do now a little bit sooner if I had been willing to put myself out there and connect with people.
I cannot imagine you being a shy school in high school.
I was so shy in high school. I didn't even go to my prom in high school. I was extremely shy.
But I guess you connect the right dots to become who you are right now. That's awesome. All right. So what advice would you have to have gotten when you were in high school?
I was really shy in high school, like I said, and I think maybe my advice would have been to not care so much about what people think. I think I was always a little bit scared to put myself out there or try to make new friends because I was so worried people wouldn't like me, wouldn't like, the way I looked or the things I was interested in, or all of the many things that you worry about in high school. And, I think I probably would have had more fun in high school if I just, I know it's very hard, but if I just tried to not care so much about those things and just, try to make a new friend if I think someone seems cool, try to take a class, even if I thought that class might be hard for me, but I was interested in the subject. So just kind of worrying a little bit less and just following my heart a little bit more.
Yeah, but you become more open person in San Diego. You took the UCDC program to take yourself out of California.
Yes.
I think that's amazing. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I do feel like college is where I became more outgoing, where I really found a great friend group. I discovered things I was interested in. So I hope that it will be that for many of you as well.
So for you, UC San Diego is a perfect choice for you to shape who you are. That's awesome. Yeah.
And I will say, Gina, for college, I feel like observing myself and all of my friends, I feel like it's important to think about the fact that I don't really think there is a perfect choice. I think it's there are so many schools, and I know people get rejected at colleges. I certainly got rejected at certain colleges. Everyone I know practically did. It's very hard to get into college because a lot of people want to go. And I think just knowing that wherever you end up going to school and whatever you end up doing, you will find your friends, you will do well if you're motivated to do well there. And that's
Oh yeah, that's a great advice for our current seniors and upcoming juniors as well. Well, we have 4 minutes left. I think this will be maybe the last question. Have any of the campaigns you've made failed?
So that's an interesting question. So we don't technically do like campaigns, because we kind of do this, the things that then marketing firms and companies use for campaigns. But what I will say is, like, we've had things where the client wasn't happy, or where they didn't go the way that we expected them to go. And I think that often that comes down to, like what I said, just the fact that it's really hard to find an answer that feels right when there really is no right answer. And I think I don't necessarily think of anything as a failure, but I think that a lot of times things that went less well or were less successful were just kind of a communication failure, more than they were like that the work wasn't good.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, as I mean, like you said, collaboration, talk about it, receiving no also gives you a lot of to be where you are. So wrapping up, thank you so much, Ms. Terra, for this time to share your experience, your educational background, your career journeys to be where. And I'm sure all our 98 attendees were hearing about your story, were curious, and they will reach out to you if they have any questions. Do you have any last word for the student?
No, it's just thank you guys all for listening to me. I hope it was interesting to you. And yeah, just want to emphasize, whether it's reaching out to me or someone else who you just meet in the world and you think what they do sounds cool, you want to learn more, just don't hesitate to do that. Just kind of follow your heart. You're in a place where you can explore so many different possibilities, and don't limit yourself to just what you know right now.